The stars had always seemed peaceful to Commander Jake Morrison. He had spent 15 years in the United Earth Defense Force, traveling between colonies, protecting trade routes, and keeping humanity safe. In all that time, the biggest threats he faced were pirates and the occasional asteroid. The universe, it seemed, was a quiet place. That belief died on a cold Tuesday morning in the year 2347. Jake stood on the bridge of the destroyer Relentless, watching the main screen as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They had received a distress signal from the Mayan colony on Kepler 442b, a small world at the edge of human space. The message had been short and filled with screaming. "Sir, I'm not detecting any communication signals from the colony," said Lieutenant Amy Chun, his communications officer. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "Take us in slow," Jake ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get close." The Relentless moved forward through the darkness of space. As they approached the planet, the sensors began painting a picture that made Jake's blood run cold. The colony was gone. Not damaged. Not under attack. Gone. Where 12,000 people had lived and worked just 3 days ago, there was nothing but smoking ruins and melted metal. What could do this? Whispered someone behind him. Jake didn't have an answer. Human weapons couldn't cause this kind of destruction. Neither could any natural disaster he knew of. This was something else entirely. "Commander, we have incoming contacts," called out his tactical officer. 12 ships, unknown design. "They're big, sir. Really big." The ships that appeared on his screen were unlike anything in human records. They were black and angular, covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with a faint purple light. Each one was at least twice the size of his destroyer. They moved through space with a grace that suggested technology far beyond humanity's level. "We're being hailed," Amy said. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and Jake found himself looking at a nightmare. The creature on the screen was over 7 feet tall, with a body like a giant insect. It had 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws, and its face was a mass of mandibles and multifaceted eyes. When it spoke, its voice was like stones grinding together. "I am Kethral, Fleet Commander of the Vrathkai Dominion. Your species has been judged. You have one of your months to surrender all your colonies and submit to our rule. If you refuse, we will do to your worlds what we did to this one." Jake's hands tightened into fists, but he kept his voice calm. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. We have no quarrel with you. Whatever happened here, we can discuss it. There's no need for more violence." Kethral made a sound that might have been laughter. "Discuss? You misunderstand, human. The Vrathkai do not discuss. We have conquered 40 worlds across this galaxy. Species stronger than yours have knelt before us. You will kneel too, or you will burn." To prove his point, Kethral gestured to something off-screen. A moment later, Jake watched in horror as one of the alien ships fired on a civilian transport that had been hiding behind a nearby moon. The transport, carrying 300 people fleeing the colony, exploded in a flash of light. "That was unnecessary," Jake shouted. "That was a lesson," Kethral replied. "Learn it well. 1 month, human. Then we come for everything." The transmission cut off. The alien ships turned and jumped away, leaving Jake alone with the wreckage of the colony and the debris of the transport. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. Jake could feel the fear and anger radiating from his crew. He shared both feelings, but he couldn't show it. They needed him to be strong. "Get me a damage report," he said quietly, "and start scanning for survivors on the planet." They found none. 12,000 people, gone in an instant. Jake walked through the ruined streets of the colony with a small team recording everything. The buildings had been melted by some kind of energy weapon. The bodies they found were barely recognizable as human. Dr. Lisa Grant, a xenobiologist who had been stationed at the colony's research center, was one of the few survivors. She had been in an underground bunker when the attack came, studying rock samples. When Jake's team found her, she was clutching a datapad to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the universe. "I recorded everything," she told Jake, her voice hollow with shock. "Their ships, their weapons, their communications. I don't know if it will help, but I recorded everything." Jake put a hand on her shoulder. "It will help. I promise." They returned to the Relentless and began the long journey back to Earth. As the ship traveled through the darkness between stars, Jake sat in his quarters and thought about what he had seen. The Vrathkai were unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. They were stronger, more advanced, and completely without mercy. Standard military forces wouldn't be enough. Jake had read the classified reports, had heard the whispers about what Earth really had hidden away. He had hoped those weapons would never be needed. Now he knew better. He opened a secure channel to Admiral Patricia Cole at High Command. Her face appeared on his screen, aged and tired, but still sharp. "Commander Morrison, I've seen your preliminary report. How bad is it?" "Worse than the report says, Admiral. These things have conquered 40 worlds. They destroyed that colony like it was nothing. Our fleet can't match them in a straight fight." Cole was silent for a moment. "What are you suggesting?" Jake took a deep breath. This was a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Once he said the words, everything would change. "I'm suggesting we activate the Omega protocols. Wake up the Apex soldiers." Cole's face went pale. "You know what those people are. What they did in the Solar Wars." "I know," Jake said. "I also know that right now, they might be the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. The Vrathkai want us to surrender or die. I say we give them a third option." The Admiral stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "God help us all," she whispered. "I'll make the call." The transmission ended. Jake leaned back in his chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an army of monsters was preparing to destroy everything he loved. But humanity had monsters of its own. And soon, the Vrathkai would learn what happened when they woke up. Admiral Patricia Cole had served in the military for 40 years. She had seen wars begin and end. She had signed orders that sent thousands of soldiers to their deaths. She had made hard choices that kept her awake at night. But nothing in her long career had prepared her for what she was about to do. Her shuttle approached the station slowly. From the outside, it looked like any other research facility orbiting Neptune. There were no weapons visible, no military markings, nothing to suggest what waited inside. That was the point. The station wasn't supposed to exist. The people inside it weren't supposed to exist either. Captain Ben Taylor met her at the docking bay. He was a tall man with gray hair and the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much. He had been the commander of this station for 15 years, watching over the most dangerous secret in human history. "Admiral Cole," he said, shaking her hand. "I wish you were here under better circumstances." "So do I, Captain." "Take me to them." They walked through clean white corridors that seemed too ordinary for what the station contained. Ben explained the security measures as they went. The station had no connection to any network. Its location was known to only 12 people in the entire government. If anything went wrong, the whole facility could be destroyed in seconds by nuclear charges built into its core. "We've kept them frozen for 80 years, Ben said. After the Solar Wars ended, the government decided they were too dangerous to keep active. Too violent. Too unpredictable. But they couldn't kill them either. So they put them here, waiting for a day they hoped would never come. Patricia nodded. She had read the files. During the solar wars of the 23rd century, Earth had faced destruction from its own colonies. The war had been brutal, with millions dead on both sides. In desperation, scientists had created the apex soldiers. They were humans, but enhanced in ways that went beyond anything normal. Faster, stronger, smarter, and completely without fear. They had turned the war around in just 2 years, but victory came at a cost. The apex soldiers didn't stop killing when the war ended. They couldn't. They had been made for violence, and violence was all they understood. Some had to be put down. Others simply walked away and vanished. The few that remained loyal were too dangerous to keep around and too valuable to destroy. So they slept. The cryo chamber was massive. Hundreds of pods lined the walls, each containing a frozen figure. Patricia walked past them slowly, reading the names on the displays. These were not heroes. They were weapons with human faces, and she was about to set them loose on an unsuspecting galaxy. "Which ones do you recommend?" she asked. Ben led her to a cluster of 5 pods at the center of the room. "If you only wake a few, make it these. They were the most effective unit in the war. They're also the most stable, if you can call any of them that." Their leader kept them focused. Without him, they would have been just as bad as the others. Patricia looked at the first pod. Inside was a man in his 30s with a scarred face and short, dark hair. His file said his name was Danny Reyes, Sergeant Major. His combat record was terrifying. In one battle, he had killed over 300 enemy soldiers by himself. In another, he had walked through a minefield just to reach an enemy commander and break his neck with his bare hands. The other pods held his squad. Maria Santos, a sniper who had once killed a target from over 4 miles away. Chris Kowalski, called Bear by everyone who knew him, a giant of a man who specialized in close combat. Zoe Kim, an explosives expert who could turn anything into a weapon. And Nathan Price, a tactical genius who planned operations that seemed impossible until they succeeded. "Wake them," Patricia said. Thought the process took several hours. The pods opened one by one, releasing cold mist into the air. Medical teams stood by, but they kept their distance. These were not patients. These were predators coming out of hibernation. Danny Reyes was the first to open his eyes. He sat up slowly, looking around the room with cold, empty eyes. When he saw Patricia, he didn't salute or show any sign of respect. He just watched her like a wolf watching prey. "Admiral Cole," Ben said carefully. "This is Sergeant Major Reyes. He's the leader of the Apex squad." "I know who I am," Danny said. His voice was rough from decades of disuse. "What I want to know is why I'm awake. The deal was we sleep until Earth needs us. So either Earth needs us or someone made a very big mistake." Patricia stepped forward. She refused to show fear, even though every instinct told her to run. "Earth needs you. We're facing an alien invasion. A species called the Vrathkai has given us 1 month to surrender or be destroyed. They've already killed 12,000 people on one of our colonies." Danny's expression didn't change. "Aliens, that's new." He looked at his squad, who were now all awake and watching. "How many of them?" "Their fleet has over 2,000 warships. We estimate their ground forces number in the millions." "And how many of us are you waking up?" "Just the 5 of you. For now." For the first time, something like emotion crossed Danny's face. It might have been amusement. 5 of us against millions. I like those odds. Maria Santos stretched like a cat, her movements smooth and dangerous. "It's been a while since we had a real fight. These aliens any good?" "They've conquered 40 worlds," Patricia said. "They've never lost a war." Bear cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing through the chamber. "Neither have we." Nathan Price, the quiet one, spoke up. "We'll need intelligence." everything you have on their weapons, tactics, and weaknesses. If they have weaknesses, Patricia handed him a datapad. Dr. Lisa Grant gathered this during the attack. She recorded everything she could. Nathan took the pad and began reading. The others gathered around him, suddenly focused and professional. Watching them work, Patricia felt a strange mix of hope and terror. These 5 people might be humanity's only chance. They might also be just as dangerous as the enemy they were meant to fight. Danny turned back to her. One question, Admiral. After we deal with these aliens, what happens to us? Back in the freezer? Patricia hesitated. That will be decided later. Danny smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Fair enough. Point us at the enemy. We'll handle the rest. As she left the station, Patricia wondered if she had just saved humanity or doomed it. Perhaps both. Only time would tell. The Vrathkai had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. In that time, they had faced every kind of enemy. They had fought species with powerful technology, species with strange mental abilities, and species that outnumbered them 100 to 1. They had won every time. Their warriors were raised from birth to fight and die with honor. Their code demanded that they face enemies in direct combat, crushing them with superior strength and skill. They had never faced anything like the humans. On New Anchorage, the colony world was supposed to be an easy target. Intelligence reports showed a small human settlement of about 5,000 civilians. No military base. No heavy weapons. The Vrathkai sent 10,000 of their elite soldiers to take it, expecting the operation to last maybe 2 days. Fleet Commander Kethril watched from orbit as the dropships descended toward the planet. He felt confident. The humans had less than a month left before his full fleet would sweep across their territory. This attack was just a reminder of what was coming. A way to show them that resistance was pointless. The dropships landed without any problems. The soldiers formed up in perfect ranks and began marching toward the settlement. Reports came back quickly. The colony was empty. The humans had evacuated. Kethril felt a small moment of disappointment. He had hoped for at least some fighting, but it didn't matter. His soldiers would burn the empty buildings and move on to the next target. Then the first commander died. There was no warning. One moment, Sub-Commander Vreth was leading his battalion toward the colony center. The next moment, his head exploded in a spray of purple blood. The soldiers around him froze in confusion. There had been no sound, no visible weapon. Just death from nowhere. Before anyone could react, 2 more officers fell. Then 5 more. Then a dozen. Panic spread through the ranks as warriors who had never known fear suddenly found themselves dying without even seeing their enemy. Maria Santos lay on a ridge 3 miles away, a rifle steady against her shoulder. Through her scope, she could see the chaos spreading through the alien army. Each shot was perfect, each target carefully chosen. She wasn't just killing soldiers. She was destroying their command structure, leaving them confused and leaderless. "Command is down," she reported through her communicator. "Moving to secondary targets." On the ground below, the Vrathkai tried to organize. They spread out, searching for the sniper. But Maria was already moving, setting up at a new position before they could even figure out where the shots had come from. She was a ghost, invisible and deadly. While the aliens searched the hills, Bear moved through their ranks like a storm made of muscle and rage. He had dropped from a low-flying shuttle right into the middle of their formation, and now he was doing what he did best. The Vrathkai were big, over 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor. They were used to being the strongest things on any battlefield. Bear was bigger. He stood 7'4" and weighed over 300 pounds, all of it muscle. When he hit the first warrior, the alien's chest caved in like it was made of paper. The Vrathkai surrounded him, sure that numbers would win. They were wrong. Bear grabbed one warrior and used him as a weapon against the others. He broke arms, legs, and necks with his bare hands. When they stabbed him with their blades, he barely seemed to notice. He just kept fighting, kept killing, leaving a trail of broken bodies behind him. Zoe Kim had her own approach. She had spent the previous day sneaking through the alien camp, planting small devices on their equipment. Now she sat on a hill with a remote control in her hand, watching the fireworks. The first explosion took out their communication center. The second destroyed their ammunition depot. The third and fourth hit their medical stations. One by one, she turned their own resources into weapons against them. By the time she was done, the alien army had no way to call for help, no supplies, and no way to treat their wounded. Through it all, Nathan Price watched from a hidden position, coordinating everything. He tracked enemy movements, directed his teammates, and adjusted the plan as needed. He saw patterns that no one else could see, weaknesses that no one else would notice. The aliens were strong, but they were predictable. And Nathan had been trained to exploit predictability. The sun began to set on new anchorage. The Vrathkai army, or what was left of it, had gathered in their main camp. They had lost over 3,000 soldiers and most of their officers. They didn't understand what was happening. Their enemies fought without honor, striking from shadows and vanishing before they could respond. Then Danny Reyes walked into their camp. He came alone, in plain sight, moving with the confidence of someone who had nothing to fear. The Vrathkai surrounded him immediately, weapons raised. Danny didn't even slow down. "I want to talk to whoever's in charge," he said calmly. A large warrior pushed forward. "I am Battle Chief Korath. You dare to face us, human? You will die slowly for what your people have done today." Danny looked at him with empty eyes. "Your code says the warriors can challenge each other in single combat. The winner's terms are honored. Is that right?" Korath made a sound of surprise. "You know our ways. I do my homework. So here's my challenge. I fight your best warrior. If I win, you leave this planet and never come back. If I lose, well, you can do whatever you want with what's left of me." The Vrathkai laughed. The idea of a single human defeating their champion was absurd. Korath stepped forward eagerly. "I accept your challenge. I am the best warrior in this army. Prepared to die." They cleared a space in the center of the camp. Thousands of Vrathkai gathered to watch. Korath drew his blade, a massive curved weapon that had killed hundreds of enemies. Danny stood empty-handed. The fight lasted less than a minute. Korath swung his blade with incredible speed, but Danny was faster. He dodged the first strike, caught Korath's arm on the second, and broke it with a single twist. Before the alien could scream, Danny had moved behind him and snapped his neck. Silence fell over the camp. Danny turned to face the crowd. "Who's next?" They sent another warrior. Danny killed him too. Then another and another. Each fight was shorter than the last. Danny moved like water, flowing around every attack and striking back with terrible precision. He didn't use weapons because he didn't need them. His hands were enough. By the time the sun fully set, 12 of their best warriors lay dead at his feet. The survivors were backing away, fear obvious in their movements. These were soldiers who had conquered 40 worlds, and they were afraid of one human. Danny walked out of the camp without looking back. Behind him, the Vrathkai began running for their dropships, desperate to escape the nightmare this planet had become. In orbit, Kethro watched the footage with growing horror. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak, frightened creatures. Instead, 5 of them had destroyed an army. For the first time in his long life, he felt doubt creeping into his heart. And somewhere in the darkness of space, he could swear he heard laughter. News traveled fast across the Vrathkai Empire. Within days, Every warrior in the fleet had heard whispers about what happened on New Anchorage. The official reports were sealed, classified at the highest levels, but soldiers talk. They always talk. The stories grew with each telling. 5 humans had destroyed an army of 10,000. A sniper had killed from distances that should have been impossible. A giant had torn through warriors like they were made of cloth. And their leader, a human with dead eyes and empty hands, had killed a dozen champions without breaking a sweat. Young warriors who had dreamed of glory now looked at their orders with new eyes. Veterans who had never known defeat began checking their weapons more carefully. And in the quiet moments between battles, everyone wondered the same thing. What if we're next? Fleet Commander Kethral tried to contain the damage. He executed 3 soldiers for spreading rumors. He ordered the survivors of New Anchorage to never speak of what they had seen. But fear is like water. It finds every crack, every weakness, and it seeps through. Meanwhile, the Apex squad was not content to wait. They sat in a small room aboard a human cruiser, studying holographic maps of the Korath system. This was the main staging ground for the Vrathkai invasion fleet. Over 500 warships were gathered there, along with supply depots, repair stations, and enough soldiers to conquer a dozen worlds. Nathan Price pointed to different locations on the map as he explained his plan. Their security is designed to stop fleets, not individuals. They're watching for large attacks, not small infiltrations. We can use that. Danny leaned forward. How do we get in? We captured one of their shuttles after New Anchorage. It still has valid codes. We fly in like we belong there, land on one of the smaller stations, and work our way through the system. Maria cleaned her rifle as she listened. And once we're in, we do what we do best, Nathan said. We make them afraid. We hit their supplies, their communications, their leadership. We don't try to destroy them in one strike. We make them paranoid. We make them see threats everywhere. An army that's afraid of shadows can't fight effectively. Zoe grinned. I like it. Death by 1,000 cuts. Bear just cracked his knuckles. When do we start? 2 days later, a Vrathkai shuttle entered the Korath system with proper clearance codes and standard cargo. No one looked twice at it. Shuttles came and went constantly as the fleet prepared for the invasion. This one landed at a small supply depot on the edge of the system and was forgotten about immediately. That was a mistake. The first night, 3 supply warehouses exploded. The fire spread quickly, destroying enough food and equipment to supply an army for months. The Vrathkai assumed it was an accident. Their safety systems were outdated, and accidents happened. The second night, the system's main communication relay went offline. Engineers worked frantically to repair it, but every time they fixed one problem, another appeared. It took 4 days to restore full communications. In that time, the fleet was effectively deaf and blind. On the 3rd night, commanders started disappearing. Sub-Commander Vrath was found in his quarters with his throat cut. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of who had done it. The next night, 2 more officers died the same way. Then 3 more. Then 5. Panic spread through the leadership. Officers demanded extra guards. Some refused to sleep in their assigned quarters. One captain barricaded himself in his ship's bridge and refused to come out for any reason. Kethral ordered his best investigators to find the killers. They found nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA, no footage. It was like ghosts were moving through his fleet. Killing at will. Maria was responsible for most of the officer deaths. She had always been patient, able to wait for hours in uncomfortable positions until the perfect moment. She learned the patterns of the Vrathkai guards, found the blind spots in their security, and struck when no one was watching. Each kill was clean and professional, designed to create maximum fear with minimum evidence. Bear preferred a more direct approach. He raided a barracks on the fourth night, killing an entire battalion in their sleep. The Vrathkai didn't even know he had been there until morning, when they found the bodies. 50 warriors, all dead, without a single alarm being raised. Zoe turned the environment itself against them. She poisoned water supplies with toxins synthesized from local plants. She rigged doors to explode when opened. She reprogrammed maintenance robots to attack anyone who came too close. Every day brought new deaths, new accidents, new reasons to be afraid. Nathan coordinated everything from a hidden location, watching through hacked security cameras and intercepted communications. He knew where every patrol was, when every shift changed, where every weakness could be found. He fed information to his teammates constantly, keeping them one step ahead of any response. And Danny? Danny was everywhere. The Vrathkai began seeing him in places he couldn't possibly be. Guards reported a human watching them from dark corners, only for him to vanish when they looked again. Officers swore they heard his footsteps in empty corridors. Some claimed he could walk through walls, appear and disappear like smoke. The truth was simpler, but no less terrifying. Danny moved through the stations and ships like he belonged there, hiding in plain sight or in spaces too small for the large Vrathkai to check. He let himself be seen just often enough to feed the paranoia. He wanted them to know he was there. He wanted them to feel hunted. On the 6th day, Kethril finally caught up with him. The fleet commander had set a trap, using himself as bait. He knew the human leader would eventually come for him. So he waited in his command center, surrounded by 50 of his best warriors. And he waited. Danny walked in through the front door. For a long moment, no one moved. Kethril stared at the human who had caused so much chaos. Danny stared back with those empty, dead eyes. "You're brave," Kethril said. "Stupid, but brave. You're surrounded. There's no escape." Danny smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "I'm not here to escape. I'm here to deliver a message." He moved before anyone could react. The first warrior died with a broken neck. The second lost his arm before Danny used the alien's own blade to cut him down. Danny flowed through the room like water, like death given human form. Warriors fell around him, unable to land a single blow. Kethril joined the fight, his honor demanding that he face this enemy himself. They clashed in the center of the room, strength against speed, experience against pure killing instinct. The fight destroyed everything around them. Walls cracked. Equipment shattered. Bodies piled up. In the end, Danny stood over the broken form of the fleet commander. Kethril was still alive, but barely. His arms were broken, his legs shattered, his face a mask of purple blood. Danny knelt beside him. "Here's the message," he said quietly. "Go home. Tell your people what waits for them here. Tell them that we were being gentle. Tell them that if they come back, we won't hold back." He stood and walked out of the room, leaving Kethril among the bodies of his warriors. Behind him, the fleet commander could only stare at the ceiling and wonder what kind of monsters the humans had created. The next day, the Vrathkai fleet began its withdrawal from the system. No one gave the order. No one needed to. Every warrior in the fleet had heard what happened to Kethril. Every warrior understood the message. The humans had won, and the real war hadn't even started yet. The weeks that followed the Korath incident changed everything. The Vrathkai, who had spent 1,000 years as the most feared force in the galaxy, were suddenly uncertain. Their attacks on human colonies became hesitant, then sporadic, then stopped altogether. For the first time in their history, their warriors refused orders. It wasn't that they had lost their courage. The Vrathkai were still proud, still dangerous. But something fundamental had shifted. They had built their entire culture around the idea that strength meant victory. They had never faced an enemy who was simply better at violence than they were. The stories from Korath spread across their empire. Warriors whispered about the ghosts who moved through shadows, killing without being seen. They talked about the human who couldn't be stopped, who had broken their greatest commander like a toy. Young soldiers who had once dreamed of conquest now dreamed of surviving. Kethro recovered slowly from his injuries. His body healed, but his spirit did not. He had seen something in Danny's eyes during their fight, something that haunted him. The human had not been angry. He had not been afraid. He had been empty, a vessel filled with nothing but the capacity for violence. Fighting him had been like fighting a force of nature. The High Council of the Vrathkai summoned Kethro to give testimony. They wanted to understand what had happened, how 5 humans had done so much damage. Kethro told them everything. He described the attacks, the chaos, the fear that had spread through his fleet. He showed them the footage of his own defeat. When he finished, the council chamber was silent. These were the most powerful leaders of the Vrathkai Empire, beings who had ordered the destruction of entire civilizations. They looked at each other with expressions that might have been fear. "What do you recommend?" The High Chancellor asked. Kethro bowed his head. "Make peace, whatever it costs. These humans have weapons we cannot match. And I don't mean their ships or their technology. I mean those 5 soldiers. I have conquered 30 worlds, Chancellor. I have never faced anything like them. If they have more hidden away, we will lose this war." The debate lasted for 3 days. Some council members argued for continued aggression. Pride demanded that they not back down from lesser beings. But the footage from Korath played on a loop in the background, showing their elite warriors falling like insects. In the end, practical concern won over pride. The Vrathkai sent ambassadors to Earth. Admiral Patricia Cole met them in the Great Hall of the United Nations building. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, studying Vrathkai customs and communication styles. She knew that showing strength was essential. These beings respected power above all else. The Vrathkai delegation entered with all the dignity they could manage. Their lead ambassador, a female named Sothra, was smaller than the warriors but radiated authority. She looked around the room, noting the human guards, the camera drones, the various officials gathered to witness history. "We come to discuss terms," Sothra said. "The Vrathkai Dominion proposes a cessation of hostilities." Cole nodded. "Earth is prepared to discuss peace. The peace requires more than just stopping the attacks. You destroyed one of our colonies. 12,000 people died. You threatened to destroy many more. There must be consequences." Sothra's mandibles clicked in what might have been annoyance. "What consequences do you demand?" "Reparations for the destroyed colony. The release of all prisoners taken during your previous conquests. A mutual non-aggression treaty that applies to all species in this region of space. And an acknowledgement that humanity is not to be threatened again." The demands were significant. A year ago, the Vrathkai would have laughed at them. Now, Sothra simply nodded. "These terms are acceptable. But we have a demand of our own. Name it. The weapons you used against us. The soldiers who attacked our fleet. They must be contained. We will not agree to peace if those beings are allowed to roam free." Cole had expected this. She had discussed it with Danny and his squad before the negotiations began. They had agreed, though she suspected they would have agreed to almost anything that ended the war. "The Apex soldiers will return to containment," Cole said. "They will only be awakened if humanity faces an existential threat. You have my word." Sothra studied her with multifaceted eyes. "Your word means little to us. But we have seen what your soldiers can do. We believe you would not hesitate to release them again. That is enough." The treaty was signed that evening. Cameras captured the moment as Sothra and Cole pressed their hands against the document, sealing the agreement with both human and Vrathkai biometric signatures. Across human space, people celebrated. The war was over before it truly began. 3 days later, Jake Morrison visited the Neptune station. He had been promoted to admiral after his actions at Kepler 442b, though he didn't feel like he deserved it. He had just been the messenger. The real heroes were the 5 people waiting for him in the cryo-chamber. Danny and his squad stood in front of their pods, already dressed in the simple white clothing worn for cryogenic suspension. They looked smaller somehow, less threatening. But Jake knew better. He had seen the footage. He knew what they were capable of. "I wanted to thank you personally," Jake said. "What you did saved billions of lives. Humanity owes you everything." Danny shrugged. "We did what we were made to do. Nothing more. You could stay awake, you know. Be heroes. Live normal lives." Maria laughed softly. "Normal lives? Admiral, look at us. We don't know how to live normal lives. We don't know how to be anything except what we are." Bear nodded, his massive frame somehow appearing gentle. "She's right. Out there, we'd be dangerous. We'd get bored or angry or scared, and people would get hurt. In here, at least we're useful." Zoe smiled sadly. "Besides, the galaxy needs to know we exist. As long as we're sleeping, we're a threat. A reason for species like the Vrathkai to think twice before attacking humanity. Wake us up, and we're just 5 people. Keep us frozen, and we're a legend." Nathan, quiet as always, simply shook Jake's hand. "Take care of humanity, Admiral. We'll be here if you meet us." Danny was the last to approach. He looked at Jake with those empty eyes, and for a moment, Jake saw something there. Not warmth, exactly, but something like respect. "Just promise me something," Danny said. "If you ever need us again, don't hesitate. Don't debate, don't argue, don't wait until it's too late. Just wake us up. Some nightmares exist to keep the real monsters away." Jake nodded. "I promise." The squad entered their pods one by one. The machines hummed to life, filling the chamber with cold mist. Through the frost-covered glass, Jake watched their faces relax as they slipped into the long sleep. He stayed until the pods were fully sealed, until the lights dimmed and the chamber fell silent. Then he walked out of the station and back to his shuttle, back to a galaxy that would never know how close it had come to destruction. Years passed. The treaty held. The Vrathkai retreated to their own space, nursing their wounded pride. Other species heard the stories and gave humanity a wide berth. The legend of the Apex soldiers spread, growing larger with each telling, and on a hidden station orbiting Neptune, 5 warriors slept. They dreamed of violence, of blood, of battles that had been and battles that might come. They waited in the darkness between the stars, patient and deadly, ready to wake when humanity called. Some nightmares, after all, exist to keep the real monsters away.